There will be spoilers ahead. Lots of spoilers, so be careful, won't you?
Cower, puny mortals, at this, our latest entry in Remember, You Asked For It. Your doom is nigh. You would not believe how nigh. This is the nighest it can get. But all is not lost. For the simple price of your soul, all your dreams can come true. Yes, think of it. With the awesome power of this podcast, you will never lose another sock in the dryer. No loaf of bread you ever buy will have end crust pieces ever again.
I like those.
You will have the power to eat canned peaches up to 6 months past the expiration date. Such dark magic! And all you must pay is your soul. Or 16 monthly payments of 1/5 of your soul each. Some restrictions may apply, not available in all states.
Sorry, Tennessee.
So, do we have a deal? Oh, come on! This is totally worth it! Fine, be that way, jerks. Just for that, you will be doomed, you hear me? Doomed to listen to this week's podcast about the 1967 infernal comedy Bedazzled, starring Peter Cook and Dudley Moore. Ooh, boy, I bet you're in Repentance City right now, huh?
No.
I'm your host, Max, the third Viscount of Insufficient Lighting, Levine, and over there, rising from the sulphurous pits of mild ennui, is Mike, the second runner-up in the Miss Ultimate Evil contest, Luce. Let's hear your concession speech, Mike.
What you mean, miss?
I'm sorry, I had a cold.
Now, what is this trying to, send away any potential listeners at the beginning of the show thing?
Well, you know...
Do I have to fire you again?
Bargaining for people's souls is all.
Fired.
Well,
just want them to listen to a nice show.
Well, we are going to listen to a nice show about the movie Bedazzled, the 1967 version, not the 2000 remake, as recommended by... What?
Uh-oh.
Yep, 15 minutes to whop there. Uh-oh.
Wait, we weren't supposed to watch the Brendan Fraser one?
No.
Oh.
Vince specifically said the 1967 one.
Well, good thing then that's the one I watched.
Oh, good. I was totally taken in by your clever subterfuge.
He actually was.
I totally was not.
You totally were.
But Vince, the Penguin Master, recommended this.
Yeah.
But before we get to this, we've got our poll question from weeks and weeks ago.
Poll question.
We asked, do you like your movie villains simply villainous, mwahaha, or do you prefer them deeply examined? That meddling landscape painter who continuously foils my plans, Degsy O'Brien, says...
I hope he is a landscape painter, and he puts you in it, and it's not complimentary.
You monster. I want my villains complex, but not necessarily giving me exposition or justification of their villainy. They can have personality traits that aren't vital to the story, but rather something that's there to flesh out the character. Give me a villain who's trying to learn to dance for his daughter's wedding, or one who's a fan of old silent horror movies, or one who cooks while giving instructions to their gang. Okay, I really want to see a villain who's trying to learn to dance for his daughter's wedding. I think that would be great.
Why do I have a feeling there's actually a movie where that happened and we just can't remember what it was?
Yeah, it sounds so good. You'd think somebody must have done that.
Maybe Degsy did. Thank you, Degsy.
He might have. Vince, the founder of this week's feast, from the frozen north, says, I think Wicked might have been one of the first understand the bad guy stories to reach a large audience, and it really didn't and still doesn't interest me. Uh-oh.
Oh, don't see our entire episode on Wicked.
Characters like Magneto, Cerebro, have a sympathetic backstory I think works, mostly because it's part of his origin and isn't totally retcon. Anyway, Maleficent was much better as someone willing to kill a baby because she didn't get a party invite. That's a point that whatever
She didn't kill a baby. She just put her to sleep.
Yeah. She tried to, though. It just got modified. That horrible movie about her backstory was supposed to be. There can be nuance, but throwing it in decades later to make money from an old franchise is just gross to me. Now it seems to be everywhere and just isn't good storytelling as a rule. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Angela Patsalis says, both, please. Well, okay, but only because there's enough for everyone.
Is there?
Regan McStravick says, mostly complex gray area villains, like Walter White or the Walter Goggins character in Justified. I thought Walter White was like more of an anti-hero, but okay.
That's what I would have thought, too.
Nick Hoffman says, it depends on the kind of movie it is for me. Cartoon villainy is fun in a silly context. But for serious drama, a deeply drawn antagonist is extremely satisfying. Think Hedy Lamarr versus Michael Corleone. You're not going to say it?
No.
That's Headley!
I wanted you to say it.
Aw. Dr. Professor Rebecca Pelkey says, I agree that it depends. Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham didn't need depth. Oh, that's true. Because it was just silly fun. I know, not a critically acclaimed film, but I love him in that role. He is the only reason to watch that movie.
He's also the only Brit, I think, in the entire film. That's Kevin Costner and Mike McShane. And it's
Mike McShane.
Isn't Christian Slater in that as Will Scarlet?
Yes, he is.
Yeah,
I think Peasant Number 4 was played by an Englishman. Most of the time, though, I like some sense of their motivations, too. I like to be a little uncomfortable about my own sympathetic reactions to a villain, if that makes sense. Sure.
Yeah.
Brian Mundo says, I'm a simple bear, but like a bear of very little brain. Give me evil for evil's sake, although I do love a good prequel that explains the why. Tyler Stewart says, if the villain's role is comedic, then you really have to go straight over the top villainous. Think of Emilio Lizardo in Buckaroo Banzai. I think I will, thank you. Otherwise, give me gritty nuance. One villain who falls midway between the two extremes is Heath Ledger's The Joker. Okay.
That's a weird one because we end up knowing nothing about him.
That's the thing. The whole thing that his backstory is, in effect, made up over and over again is part of who he is. I always like that. He keeps changing it. Chrissy Becker-Krenitsky says, it depends. We got a lot of people voting for adult diapers here. I will say
not what they mean.
I still have not seen The Joker because I don't want an origin story, nor should you.
Yeah.
He's definitely one that is more interesting when he's not explained/empathized with. I think the Nolan Ledger Joker set that precedence well. Taking a break from his busy Tatum inventing, Richard Tatum says, depends on the thing they're in.
It's New Year. Stop it.
No, never. He will get credit for the invention of the Tatum. He is criminally overlooked.
Once again, tell me right now what a Tatum is.
And
if it matches what you said...
stomach pump.
No, that is not what you said last time. So no more Tatums.
A Tatum has many uses.
That's not what you said at all.
You can prove nothing.
Yes, I can. We recorded it.
That's fake news. Adam Marks. It's a deep fake video.
It's not a video. It's our show.
See how fake that is?
You
Adam
moron.
Marks. It's difficult for me to decide. Really, there's no need to differentiate between a fleshed-out villain and a shallow one, so long as the character is conveyed well and the explanation of their motivations, be it deep or shallow, serves the story. Case in point, The Grinch from 2000 fleshed out the titular villain, naughty, giving him a long backstory, but it was an unneeded morass which served solely to show off the painful-to-view makeup costume of Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
The Grinch was much more entertaining when his motivations were, well, now please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, many a rendition of A Christmas Carol glosses over or removes entirely Scrooge's devotion to his sister Fan and his extreme grief at her early death. It explains with greater justification his withdrawing from life, including her son and his nephew Fred, who otherwise just sort of springs from the ether somehow, rather than expose himself to the risk of more pain that life inevitably brings. This is demonstrated by Scrooge's devotion to his growing finances and rejection of his fiancée Isabel and the fun-loving Fezziwig, which he spells Fizzywig. I think the story suffers if you leave Scrooge as just a grouchy old man who hates Christmas because, well, just because the Muppets Christmas Carol in 1982 is a rare exception. So there you are. It depends. More diapers. On the overall story.
No.
Good film means that every word, sound, and image is essential, but that will vary depending on the director's tone, intent, and skill. Dr. Steve Kellner says, seems like most everyone is saying the same thing. It depends. Insert diaper joke. On what works for the story. A nuanced story deserved a nuanced villain. Or else the villain feels like a plot device. E.g., Scrooge's redemption is more believable because he has a backstory, and without it, he's just a boss battle for the ghosts. Okay, that's a description I've never heard of Scrooge.
Finish him!
I like that. Flawless Christmas. A story relying on archetypes and epic conflict can have an over-the-top villain who likes being villainous because it's about good versus evil, not personality versus personality. Having said that, I think there are some middle ground cases. Even in something like Lord of the Rings, there is considerable exploration of the slide into evil, whether it's Smeagol Gollum, not just the ring, it merely played on his own selfishness and greed, Sauron, with his envy of the power of Sauron, I think, since they were technically peers, and even Melkor/Morgoth, whose pride and arrogance led him to interfere in the creation, in part because it's better to rule in hell than serve in heaven, as Milton put it, and Tolkien definitely knew his Milton. The toaster?
No.
I like having some reason for them being villainous, since everyone is the hero of their own story, including villains. Their reasons may be wrong-headed and screwed up, but they should have one. Dio, in the first few JoJo's Bizarre Adventure series, is a delightfully over-the-top villain who, after a while, just seems to glory in the power of being a villain and playing pranks on the various JoJo's. But he starts out with a more believable story. And just to be clear, I don't think all characters require a sympathetic backstory. I don't need to be sympathetic towards the Joker. He set out to murder people. Feeling bad or mistreated isn't sufficient reason. I understand the second Joker movie clearly corrects this misapprehension to the outrage of the idiots who didn't get it, or who see Joker/Harley as a romance rather than a story of abuse. You can feel disgusted at the moral failure of the villain and the choices they make thereafter, understanding but not accepting their reasoning. And yeah, very good. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And finally, my little cabbage, Doris Hempelmeyer, has left a message once again on our voicemail.
Has she?
Let us enjoy her dulcet tones.
Hello, Max Mike Movies. This is Doris. Hi, Max. Anyway, I want to answer your poll question. I realized I hadn't done it last week, and then I saw that there was no episode this week. It's so sad. I hope everybody's okay. Anyway, you asked if you like your villains simply villainous, or do you prefer them deeply examined? Well, to be honest, I think my answer is neither one. I think I want a guy to be kind of fleshed out, so I know a little bit about him, but I don't have to know his whole life story, especially if he's the bad guy. You know what I mean? But it's good to know that, because nobody's ever truly evil or truly good. We all got both kinds. So, give me a little bit. So maybe I can, get him. That's the answer. I hope both of you have wonderful holidays, and I look forward to hearing the episode next week. Bye.
Well, dulcet, I guess.
Indeed. Interesting point also, sort of saying both yes and no, which seems to be the way a lot of it goes.
Yeah, I mean, she kind of says, I don't like either, but then she kind of really does come down on the side of she doesn't want stuff that's unnecessary, which is one of the reasons I asked the question. But I want to hear from you first. I know you're hosting, and I don't care. Yep. What do you think, Max? What do you like in your villains?
I got to say, it does to me depend on the story. Sometimes it's really interesting. Like, the one that always stands out to me in recent years was Killmonger from the Black Panther movies, who is technically the villain, but when he's explaining his motivation, you're sitting there going, he's not really wrong.
Yeah.
So, again, it depends on the story. If the story is cartoonish, the villain should be cartoonish. If it takes away from the story, if it's like, you wish to know my evil plan, well, first, let me tell you about my childhood. Then that's just a bit much. But, so, again, I think it has to match the rest of the story. If the hero is complex, I'd like the villain to be complex. If it's just good guy versus bad guy, it doesn't need to be. What about you? Where do you come down on this?
I basically asked the question because of Wicked. And as we all know from having listened to the episode we did on Wicked, I don't like it when people retcon things so that now the villain is the good guy, or we're supposed to feel bad for them. It's like, oh, you misunderstood the way. No, I didn't misunderstand the Wicked Witch. The Wicked Witch was exactly the way she was supposed to be in that movie. She was a Wicked Witch. I don't need to know daddy issues. I don't need it. I don't like retconning. If the character was originally written a certain way for certain reasons, awesome. Go ahead and do that. Even if it comes down to just the actor deciding, you know what, I'm playing this part. My feeling is this character has this, and I'm going to use this in my performance. Awesome. The coming back later and filling in gaps part, that's the part I hate Darth Vader. So that when we get to the third Star Wars film, and I don't mean episode 3, I mean episode 6, and they take the mask off, and there's this wimpy guy. It's like Norman Krasner with scars, and he basically goes, sorry. It's like, what? This is not the Darth Vader from those strangling and lifting people with his powers. No, who's this? I don't know who this is. Stop retconning and changing stuff. If he's a villain, keep him a villain. I don't need to know that he had an unhappy childhood. I don't care. It's like when they did the same thing with Willy Wonka, and it's like, oh, you know, he had a problem with dentists. I don't care. I don't care. So write it out the first time and stick to it. Whichever way you want to do it, I don't care. But don't retcon and don't twist things around so that now I have to change my opinions because, oh, what you didn't know was that I don't care. That's what I didn't know. So, yeah. Okay. Not that I have any real opinions on this, but...
No. But these were all very interesting.
Yeah.
And very involved. I thought this was really cool. So we want more.
Yeah, we love our answers.
Yep. So here I've got a nice, dealing with a nice, non-controversial, easy-to-deal-with text. Do you have a favorite biblical or Bible-adjacent movie? 10 Commandments, Last Temptation of Christ, Jesus Christ Superstar? Let us know, and I'll tell you how to let us know. Bedazzled, yes, this was in fact inspired by this week's movie, and we will tell you at the end of the show what evil ritual you must perform, or what vicious human sacrifice, or what typing you have to do to answer it. Okay. Before we get to the trivia, though...
Do you want to stretch that out, just out of curiosity? Do you want to stretch it out to any religious-based movie or just biblical?
No, I just want biblical, because we did mythological. I want to do
I was just including other religions, but... Okay.
Yeah, no, we can, that'll be for another one. This is a little more narrow focus.
Okay.
But before we get to the trivia, our longtime commenter, our scholar, Adam Mark... had a very strong reaction to our Wicked episode.
Are you saying that we're going to have a little bit of
Listener Mail? Yes, I am.
Ooh,
and
cool.
Here it is. Mike, my husband Bruce, that's going to cause a bit of confusion. Mind if we call you Bruce just to keep it clear?
His name is Bruce.
So, yeah. Well, that does keep it clear then. Saw the stage show of Wicked for the first time last June. You are thus the sole gay man in America who has not seen it. Hang on, this is in the instructions. It specifically says golf claps.
Okay.
A few things. Music. I'm surprised neither of you cared for the music. The musical, which is almost entirely faithful to the Broadway show, is one of Broadway's best scores ever.
Okay.
Animals. I agree that the discrimination against and suppression of the animals subplot is underdeveloped. In the book, it is more strongly explained that animals are less gullible / less obsessed with power, and they have greater suspicion with the man who just shows up and claims to be a magical being without actually performing any magic. So he suppresses them and ensures the humans begin to see them as suspect. The element of the other is introduced into the plot for Elphaba to latch onto. Even 30 seconds more of dialogue could have fixed it. Derivative. I disagree with Mike's assessment. Yes, Wicked is cynical, where The Wizard of Oz is more optimistic, but don't forget the elements of cynicism, read for comedy, in the original. Who rang Well, we did. Can't you read? Read what? The notice. What notice? Sign comes out. Bell out of order. Please knock. Touching on art. Yes, it's derivative. So is all art. Oh boy. The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard rules all of Oz, but is a fake and a humbug. If you think about it for a few seconds more, the question arises, wait, who did he have to sweep out of the way to attain and maintain this power? Why does he tolerate Glinda, a witch, but seek the death of her Western colleague, and so on? Why does he need so many armed guards and the ruse of the wizard head? It's a clever extension of the original for a more adult audience. It's a film in conversation with the original. I felt the film truly wonderful, to behold. The real sets, amazing dancers, and the great talent they collected really gelled well. Extremely happy to see the result, especially when musicals in films can go so very wrong. See Cats!
No, don't. See Cats!
Some interesting points. Okay.
I don't remember calling it derivative. And he doesn't actually provide an example of how I would have said it was derivative. I don't see this Wicked having come like, oh, it's taking stuff from this other thing. If it's obviously drawn from the original movie Wizard of Oz, that's not derivative. Yeah. But I don't think I ever said it was derivative. And I'm going to stand by what we said, which was basically, we didn't enjoy it, but you might, so go give it a chance. Not everything's for everybody. This was not a film for us. I'm also going to disagree, as successful as it is, I don't find it one of Broadway's top scores ever. Again, I couldn't.
This is maybe a matter of taste. I feel the same way. I think it's good, but it's not that good. Come on.
Well, let's face it. I don't think. What is it? Give it up, send it away. What's the song from Frozen?
Package it, sell it, let it go.
Let it go. Don't like the song, but I can't help but admit that it's really catchy and memorable. I didn't find a single song from this memorable. So, again, I really appreciate that you turned us on to go see it. I would not have seen it otherwise. I think it was very well made. Just didn't enjoy it. Don't find it memorable. You probably would, and I do think it's worth seeing in the theater. So, but also, thanks for the listener mail. We like feedback. Even if we don't necessarily agree, that's okay.
Brings up some really interesting points and makes us think about it some more.
Yeah.
Which makes our little heads hurt. But
is that what that is?
That's what that wood smell is.
The sticks are rubbing.
Yep. Yeah, the little hamster's getting tired on his wheel in there. But now, trivia. The facts. Budget for Bedazzled. $600,000.
Yeah.
The take, about $1.5 million.
Well, so for the times, it was relatively successful.
Yeah. The director of this is Stanley Donen, who also directed some obscure little indie hits like Singin' in the Rain, Charade, Damn Yankees, On the Town, and a movie that actually is cited in this one, Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. He also directed the TV show Moonlighting, and of course, the science fiction classic Saturn III.
Yeah. Apparently he was a partner with Gene Kelly for a while, and they together kind of heralded MGM's golden age of Hollywood musicals through the late 40s and early 50s, and then they kind of broke up, and Donen went off to do his own thing. But, yeah.
Raquel Welch is featured in most of the promotional material for this movie.
Can't imagine why.
She's on screen for about 7 minutes.
That long?
Yeah. At the time of this movie's release, blasphemy was considered a common law offense in the UK, and the British Board of Film Censors was concerned that the movie's premise would offend religious groups. Stanley Donen defended this movie against such claims. To prove his point, Donen claimed that he had screened the movie to a London rector and the Archdeacon of Westminster Abbey, both of whom took no offense to this movie. There is no proof that he actually did that. And after this assurance, the case was dropped. By 2005, standards about what could be considered blasphemous in Britain had been relaxed. Well, they had gone through Margaret Thatcher, so there you are.
Wow.
So it was resubmitted to the British Film Board. The only problem they had was a particular scene involving Stanley's hanging attempts, which had the potential to be considered a glamorous depiction of suicide.
Glamorous?
The solution was to raise the movie's previous PG rating to a 12. I didn't think that was glamorizing at all. It just made it pathetic.
You couldn't even use it as a guide because the knot he tied would have let go, but that's fine.
Yep. An article about Peter Cook that appeared in the New Yorker stated that the filmmakers didn't have a title for this movie when it was being made. Cook suggested calling the movie Raquel Welch. The producers didn't understand why Cook would want to do this, so he explained, the movie marquees put the lead actor's name over the movie title. Thus, the marquee would say, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore in Raquel Welch. Strangely enough, they did not go with this suggestion.
Weird.
Dudley Moore adopted the moniker Stanley Moon in this movie after Sir John Gielgud wrote him a letter of introduction because he was impressed with Moore's work in the stage review Beyond the Fringe. Gielgud referred to Moore as Stanley Moon in the letter, and amused Moore adopted the name as an alter ego for the rest of his life.
Oh.
After they worked on Arthur and Arthur II on the Rocks, Gielgud good-naturedly said that he got to know Stanley Moon rather well. Dudley Moore also played another character named Stanley in Foul Play, 1978.
Oh, yeah.
And in 10, the movie 10, in 1979, his character's name was George.
Ah.
George Spigot, the devil, is always wearing red socks,
yes.
even when he's a fly.
Yeah.
Peter Cook later recalled to his astonishment that Stanley Donen turned down the offer to direct Hello, Dolly in order to make this movie.
Well, he eventually made Funny Face, so close enough.
Yeah. The penultimate scene in which George Spigot visits heaven to ask God to readmit him was filmed in the Great Conservatory at the historic Grade 1 listed mansion Sinnen House in West London. It features one of many in-jokes by Cook and Moore, since God is voiced, uncredited, by a veteran actor named Valentine Dyall.
Ah.
Popularly known as the Man in Black, after his famous role in a long-running radio series where he'd narrate supernatural stories, Dyall possessed a deep, resonant voice which led him to be frequently cast as authority figures or as sinister and evil characters. Douglas Adams used him as the voice of Deep Thought, the ultimate computer, in the original radio play of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Huh. I mostly like to quote him from this film as saying, ha 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 ha.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Dudley Moore wrote the film's original music and songs, which are performed by the Dudley Moore Trio. The title track, which is Moore's best-known song, which tells you something, is performed within the movie by the fictional psychedelic rock band Drimble, Wedge, and the Vegetation, featuring Peter Cook's character as the vocalist.
Huh.
This piece had been covered widely since, including by Tony Hatch and Nick Cave. Moore's done a few instrumental versions, too. Don't feel bad if you have no idea what I'm talking about.
I don't have any idea what you're talking about, and I feel terrible.
This movie was the theatrical debut for both Cook and Moore as starring roles. Despite her 7 minutes of screen time, Raquel Welch was so associated with this movie that when they remade it in 2000 with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley, the devil was based more on her than on Peter Cook, I guess. I've seen
didn't
both.
See, I didn't see the other one.
The Love Me, Bedazzled musical sequence on the TV pop show Go Going is obviously spoofing. Sure, it was
Top of the
spoofing the Ready Steady Go from 1963. The location scene of the film is the actual Ready Steady Go set, right down to the rediffusion cameras.
Huh.
In addition, Peter Cook and Dudley Moore had already appeared on Ready Steady Go, playing their Goodbye single to a bemused audience.
Huh.
When George Spigot says to Stanley Moon, this is one of the few very sort of subtle throwaway jokes, that the sinners who work for him perform their duties poorly because of the wages. He's alluding to Romans 6:23, which reads, For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life in Christ Jesus our Lord. It's funny.
Is it?
There is a reference to the American Clothing Company when George is making prank calls and he calls up Mrs. Fitch and says, This is Abercrombie here. I work with your husband. Apparently, Dudley Moore developed a very serious real-life crush on Eleanor Braun, who plays Margaret during the filming.
Oh, dear.
I don't think it went anywhere. And that's about it, unless you know of anything.
No. I actually had never heard of this film, so. Although once we brought it up, I was like, wait a minute. Wasn't there a film with Brendan Fraser? And I wasn't even sure until this morning. I'm like, I should check and see. Was that, in fact, a remake? Oh, it was. Okay.
Yes, it was. Very different, but it's a remake. But now we have Plotnik. What we have here is basically a modern retelling of the Faust myth. Stanley Moon, Dudley Moore, is a sad, pathetic schlub who works as a short-order cook at Wimpy Burger in London.
Wimpy
chocolate shake.
Wimpy Burger breakfast.
But where are we? Oh, right, sorry. I don't know what happened there. We'll get to that later. With a major crush on the waitress Margaret. Poor Stanley has no self-confidence and can never bring himself to ask her out or even speak to her. At the end of his rope, literally, Stanley decides to kill himself, but not before attracting the attention of one George Spigot, played by Peter Cook. George Spigot, as we all know, is one of the many names of the devil. It totally is. Check Gladiola's 4433 hike. Yes, George is actually the Prince of Darkness, the Father of Lies, Old Scratch and Sniff himself, Lucifer, and he offers Stanley 7 wishes in exchange for his soul. Stanley, thinking he has nothing to lose, accepts and keeps trying to wish himself into a reality where he can be happy with Margaret. But, well, wishes. To the surprise of no one who has ever played Dungeons & Dragons, George manages to mess up every wish, finding loophole after loophole so that Stanley has to keep canceling his wishes via the ancient and sacred ritual of going... Oddly enough, Stanley and George end up forming a sort of bond along the way, becoming friends, inasmuch as the Horned One and a mortal can be. George lends Stanley his bed a couple of times and introduces him to his employees, the 7 deadly sins, while on his way to collecting 100 billion souls, which will earn him his readmittance into heaven. What will become of Stanley? What will become of George? And what about Naomi?
There's no Naomi in this.
There should have been.
Oh, is that it?
That's it.
Ah, the end.
The film.
Right. So, Max, you'd seen this before, right?
I had. I saw it on videotape.
Like
Mainly
when?
because, oh boy, maybe back in the 80s, I guess.
Okay.
Mainly because I was a huge fan of the comedy troupe Beyond the Fringe, of which Peter Cook and Dudley Moore were key members.
Ah.
I thought they were hilarious, and Dudley Moore did a lot of comic piano and singing numbers.
Well, I think he's probably best known in this country for the Arthur movies.
Very likely. Yeah, pretty much.
His drunkenness, which, as it turns out, he was a teetotaler himself and actually didn't drink much.
He didn't, but Peter Cook apparently was a massive alcoholic.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah,
I only know Peter Cook from a couple of skits in Monty Python Live at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yeah.
He's the Will This Wind guy, right?
Yep. Yes. Can't hear a blind word you're saying. You are speaking too softly for the human ear, which is what I am equipped with.
Yeah. So, do you remember your reaction back then in the 80s?
Back then, I thought it was really funny. I'd never seen anything like it.
Oh, cool. Well,
yeah.
Do you want to get to the actors? It's not going to take us very long because there's only a few that actually speak and or do anything. So, yeah.
Well, we got Peter Cook as George Spigot. And I got to say, he looks great for the devil. And they play up so much the height difference between him and Dudley Moore because, Peter Cook is approximately 11 feet tall and Dudley Moore's 3'1".
Yeah. I don't even know that they had to play it up much. I think by playing it up, you mean they had them stand next to each other.
Yes. They did nothing to minimize it.
Yeah. Well, and I'm betting that I haven't seen really any of their stuff or the Beyond the Fringe stuff. My bet is that they did this throughout their career, that was part of the shtick. And that's fine.
Honestly, a lot of their stuff, part of the joke was they would completely ignore it.
Oh.
They would have like contests things where they were staring at each other, and Peter Cook is staring into, Dudley Moore staring into Peter Cook's belly button, basically.
Mm. Well, it's even a scene with Dudley Moore where he's actually getting to finally kiss Eleanor Braun as Margaret, and you can tell it's like, oh, he needs a box. Because he's like on tiptoe and he's straining to reach her. But Peter Cook, I will say this, he has a very British mod look for the time. And there's a lot of mod going on in this. Not as much as there could be, but there's a lot of mod, especially when they get to that little show they're doing. And I gotta say, My favorite part for him is actually when he's singing he's not even singing, but he's doing his little song right after Dudley Moore character, Stanley Moon, has done his, and he thinks he's getting all the women. And he comes out, and his entire song is basically like, I'm not interested in you, I'm not available.
I don't care.
And it's like, this is why Spock was so popular. The whole, you can't get to me, you can't get past, you can't see my emotions, you don't know what's going on stuff.
It's really kind of a sad cliche, the idea that that's what appeals to women is unavailability.
The problem I had with that scene was it was totally believable.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. And
there was nothing weird or magical about it.
That was my favorite part of his performance. Otherwise, I'm going to say fine.
Yeah, I think he does a good job. He is both, you don't trust him, but there's something inherently likable about him.
Which is a very difficult line to hold.
Yeah.
Because he's the devil. He tells you this, and then he lies to you, and you come back and go, well, maybe I'll trust him this time. And it's like, why are you doing this?
He even says, there's a sequence I really like where he says, everything I've told you, everything I'm saying is a lie, including this. What you mean? Oh, not everything I told you was a lie, except that was. Or was it? I don't know what to believe. Well, don't believe me. Believe me.
Yeah. So Peter Cook.
Yeah, he does a nice job. Dudley Moore is okay, except he's not a very convincing schlub,
Dudley Moore has charisma. And while I can understand the lack of confidence, how do I put this without being offensive? I think they needed somebody uglier.
Yeah. Yeah. I would not call him handsome.
No, but
he's got a really interesting face, and his voice is very pleasant, and he has presence.
Yeah.
There's
not like he's not clumsy. He's just a little self-conscious, which I guess I can understand that, really, because there are plenty of people who feel cool about one thing of themselves, but when it comes to dealing with the opposite, that's what the whole movie Roxanne had to deal with, right? They had that guy, and I don't remember that actor's name, but at one point, one of the women was like, that should be bronzed. And she was right. He was very handsome, very athletic, got around along with his coworkers, but when it came to talking to Daryl Hannah, he just so I can sort of get it, but I'm not going to disagree with you either.
There's also the bit where we see he can dance, and that's sort of, okay, wait, that shouldn't work.
Well, to be fair, it's during one of the wishes, so
yeah, that's true.
That's probably, yeah.
I do like his accents. He does a lot of good accents. I don't know why, for some reason, when he wishes himself to be an intellectual, he starts talking in a Welsh accent.
Me either, but it was...
I don't know why.
I could only help think of that one Monty Python bit, which hasn't happened yet, of the Welsh miners talking about the top of the columns, and whether it's called a metape or whatever it's called. That's right. And they call in their lord.
Yeah, their landlord or whatever. Yes.
Sorry, no idea.
Right, we're on strike.
But they're all Welsh, so whatever. Yep. I thought it was funny. I think the thing is that a British audience would instantly have keyed into that, and an American audience wouldn't have got it, which is kind of too bad. But
that's true.
Except, wait, we're American and we got it.
Yeah,
we watch too much British TV.
The only other thing is he talks about how he can't talk, how he has trouble with eloquence. And I don't know if it's supposed to be the character is growing, but he becomes more and more eloquent as the movie continues.
Yeah, even when he's not in a wish. Well, but he's talking to a guy. That's...
Yeah, true.
So
but he says that he's like that with everyone. He can't talk to anyone.
Well, I disagree.
As he points out that George is the only person who's ever taken an interest in him.
Yeah, and he's not... I've known people in my life who generally fly under the radar because they just don't stand out, and Dudley Moore's not one of those people.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Yeah, but that's a tough role to do.
Eleanor Braun. Well, she's there.
I think she does a decent job because she ends up playing like 9 different characters.
I think that when she's just Margaret, there's not really anything there. Like I don't see.
It's not supposed to be. She's a fantasy. She's but he doesn't really know her. But
I don't know. I don't understand what's supposed to be so interesting.
Like she's the only woman he knows.
I suppose I could see that. And later on, I think that she shows a little range, but I'm gonna have to go with fine. I didn't really think she stood out at all. Then we have Raquel Welch. I can't
Yes, who
figure
stands
out
out in a
why
couple
they
of ways.
casted her. Why, as Lust of all things, now why would you hire Raquel Welch to play Lust?
Isn't that baffling? Yeah.
As soon as she popped up in the opening credits, I'm like, well, is that perfect casting or what?
Yeah.
And it's Raquel Welch at that period in her career. All she has to do is come in and basically get down to a bathing suit, and that's why she's there.
Yeah. Nope, she was very good for the part, and she got into it. You got to say, she really played it up.
Yes. I also just kept watching her going, man, we were all so much thinner back then. She's fine. I mean, this is not
I think she does a good
not
job.
Incredible Journey. What was the one where she went with the submarine?
Fantastic Voyage.
Fantastic Voyage. This isn't Fantastic Voyage where she gets a lot to do. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, she's Raquel Welch. And then there's a bunch of people who played the 7 Deadly Sins, and they're all there.
Oh, come on. There's one who stands out, and that is Envy, played by Barry Humphries, who we may know.
Is that Dame Edna?
That is Dame Edna.
Okay.
He also played the Great Goblin in the Hobbit movie.
Part of me is just like, why are you doing that stereotypical gay thing? Like, do we have to do this? And then I didn't realize who it was until I'm looking at the credits right now, and it's like, oh, that's why he did it, because he's not acting. All right.
No, he's just he's effectively being Barry Humphries, and he does it really well.
Yeah.
He, by the way, is also the voice of Bruce the Shark in Finding Nemo.
Really?
Yep, that's him.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. He has a very flexible voice.
The funny thing is I've never watched Dame Edna really at all. And then Barry Humphries, one of the last things he did is he showed up on an episode of Portrait Artist of the Year, which is a show that I really like. And he was one of the subjects that they painted. And I'm like, oh, he's just some famous British actor, blah, 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 blah. And then I looked him up and it's like, oh, he's what? And so I started watching some of the Dame Edna stuff and it's like, okay. I mean, this is sort of like, what if you took Mrs. Slocum and really expanded her and made her a lot dirtier and then gave her a talk show? And it was pretty funny, but I would never have guessed he was Bruce the Shark. Man. In this, he's a bit part. He's fine. He's doing the
He's the only one of the sins who's interesting, well, besides lust.
Well, except I don't actually find him all that envious. He just mostly complains. It's more like, I don't like what I have, but he's not sitting there going, what I really want is that. He just sits there and goes, how come my seat's the lousy seat? That's not really envy.
You know what? One of my favorite portrayals of envy ever was, it was on the original Muppet Show. One of the specialties.
Oh, the 7 Deadly Sins one?
Yes, who was the deadliest sin. And envy is portrayed as this ball of arrows sticking out. And every time, all he says is, like, boss, envy is here. Boy, I wish I had a jacket like that. All right, so get him to the dressing room. Boy, I wish I could give orders like you do.
Wow.
Everything out of his mouth is envious. That was, I thought, perfect.
I don't think those ever got rebroadcast. I don't know what it was with the early 70s Jim Henson specials. The Frog Prince, to this day, I don't understand why even they basically don't want it released, and I don't know. I love the Frog Prince. I have the
Frog
record.
Prince is awesome.
It is so much. We get Sweetums. That's where Sweetums comes from.
That's yep. Even by name. Yep.
But
that's
the thing about the Frog Prince is it's funny. It's still funny. But anyway, that's not this movie.
Have a popover, Froggy.
Oh, he keeps eating all the popovers. So yeah, there's a bunch of other people playing small British parts, being British.
Yeah. Michael Bates, who's a classic British actor, is playing Inspector Clark, who has a very disturbing brief bit about rape.
Yeah, which, okay. It's funny because he's lusting after somebody who's just been the victim of or whatever. So, yeah, the rest of them are fine, and it's very British. And I got to say, too, that, like, wow, there is so many fewer people in London back in 1966.
Yeah, London's pretty empty in this movie.
I mean, they're showing Trafalgar Square, and there's, like, a person in it. Like, and
no
a few
pigeons.
cars. No, there's a few cars going around, and it's like, even when we were there in 85, it didn't look like that.
Nope.
So, cripes, a lot of stuff has changed. But so Faust is not. You're an English major.
Yeah.
You must know the original story, which is not entirely like this.
Not entirely unlike this, really.
What did Faust sell his soul for?
For wishes.
Oh, it was wishes. Okay.
Yes, some of it was knowledge. Mostly what he wanted. His big problem was he wanted knowledge of the material world. He wanted to know magic. He wanted to know science. He didn't care about spiritual values.
Oh, I see.
And it has got, this was back from like 15th century or so.
It's not Goethe, is it?
Goethe did a version called of Faust,
Okay.
which actually I read a translation of and I really like because he does the whole thing in verse.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, has this
German verse.
Yeah,
Sounds severe.
Yeah, it is. And you got Thomas Mann did Dr. Faustus, and
Right.
the Faust myth is very pervasive.
Well,
And it is just the devil shows up and says, "Hi, I'll give you a bunch of wishes in exchange for your soul." And in the original, the guy is damned. He goes to hell. Yeah, because he tries to repent, but it's not enough. The devil's like, "No, man, you got all the benefits of this, and now you don't want it.
Huh.
Sorry." And later versions, he is saved by the love of a woman, or he's saved by his own repentance or his desperate attempts at contrition.
So this whole 100 billion souls thing,
They pulled that out of it. That came out of nowhere.
You don't suppose it's
There's
a reference to McDonald's, do you?
It might be. Maybe Wimpy's has something like that. I don't know. Wimpy's.
Yeah, real quick. So Max and I were in Britain in 1985, and we had limited funds. And we found Wimpy's, a hamburger joint we'd never heard of, but was nearby where we were staying. And so we just, every morning we'd get up, it was 10:30, 11. We'd get up and we'd go out, what do you want to eat? And we just end up going to Wimpy's. Was Wimpy's good? No, it was not.
But there was something about the chocolate shakes.
Yeah, the chocolate shake was good.
Weirdly addictive.
Yeah.
I mean, every time it's like, let's go to Wimpy's. I want a shake. We didn't care about anything else. Like, we should probably have some protein, but I want a shake.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, Britain in the 60s. So,
it's a swinging scene.
100 billion served there. So I couldn't help but, there was another religious-based film that would come out way later, over 30 years later, that I, of course, couldn't help but think about when watching this. Did you have another film that this rang bells for you?
Well, it reminds me of Dogma.
That's the film. And it's like, part of this is, let's take the actual written word of a religion, Christianity, and play with it, which is pretty much what they're doing. They're like, well, what if we just present this straight? Except in this case, the twist is that the devil is going to screw with the wishes in ways that don't usually happen in D&D. Usually in D&D, what happens is you make a wish and it's your wording isn't clear enough. In this case, it's often the devil shows up and gets a better deal than you did, and so you get kind of screwed out of what you wanted, like the little pop song. So he's just trying to get through the wishes so he can claim the last soul and go up and get reinstated, which...
The ending is kind of strange that way. Let's jump ahead to that a little.
Sure.
He tells Stanley that if whoever gets to 100 billion souls first wins the game that they're playing.
Right.
And if he gets it, he's readmitted to heaven. And he goes up. By the way, one of my favorite moments is when he's putting on his angel robe and he's singing, "Oh, I'm so good and nice and pretty, I'll be his favorite one again." I love that. There's that, and there's one other moment in it that I really like. And he goes up and he says, "Hey, I did it. I got 100 billion souls. And I even gave this one guy his back." And because that was not the 100 billionth, he says to Stanley, "I've got 100 billion and change. He has more than enough." But and he says, "I gave it back. Wasn't that a good deed?" And St. Peter tells him, "No, that wasn't a good deed because you did it for your own amusement, for your own, make yourself feel good. That wasn't altruism, so you lose." Like, what? When did that rule get added?
I mean, let's face it, when you take very strict and non-metaphorical readings of a lot of this stuff, it gets silly. And that's the whole point of the movie Dogma, right? Where there's actually something written in there that if angels walk through this gateway, they get to go, that were expelled from heaven, they get to go back. And then they get to take over and whatever, blah, blah, blah.
To be fair, that's more of a shot at specifically at Catholicism.
Right.
Because
So here, I mean, I don't think there's actually anywhere, I'm not a biblical scholar, but my guess is that this game doesn't actually exist anywhere.
No, of course not.
And
Satan hardly shows up in the Bible. He's referred to, the only time he actually makes a real appearance, well, there's two times. One is when he's with Jesus and he offers him the kingdoms of the earth, and the other is Job.
Right.
That's the only time we ever hear him playing any kind of game with God, going, "Hey, God, I bet you've messed with Job. he'll curse your name. But yeah, that they just came out with nowhere.
Okay. So, yeah, we've got this whole turnabout at the end because we have to, because there's no way there's not going to be a bit where the devil loses, and that our hero, I guess, Stanley Moon, Mr. Moon, sorry, that's a deeper, gets his soul back, and, he may actually get the girl, and, blah, 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 blah.
Well, the thing is, that's the one thing I did like. At the very end, because he has tried everything to end up with Margaret. He says, I want to be rich and I want us to be married, or I want us to be deeply in love, and then it turns out she's married to someone else.
Right.
Well,
you mean one of the dreams.
Yeah, the wishes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is, in real life, he can't even talk to her. And finally, he just says, would you like to have dinner tonight? And she says, I can't. Maybe some other night. So it's not that he's lost. He's finally got the confidence to ask, and he's not crushed when she says that. So he's actually grown.
Well, and here's the thing that's kind of weird. Early on, we see him watch her as she leaves their job, and she jumps into what is, it's a BMW Isetta, which is
Is that what that thing is, where the whole front of the car opens?
It's a three-wheeled car, so it could get past the British having to have a driver's license. It's considered a motorcycle. And so they get in and pedal away.
Armchair.
Because, it's got, I forget, it's like 18 horsepower or something like that.
God.
It's a BMW. It's actually BMW.
Wow.
And they all pedal. So she has a boyfriend of some sort. So he knows that she's got a boyfriend. But she doesn't say no. So that's,
he says not tonight.
Yeah.
And he's okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is all through the wishes, he never actually learns about her. He only learns about wish fulfillment Barbie.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Well, the last view of her, though, it's that 60s things where they're not only wearing pale blue eyeshadow, but they take it all the way up to the eyebrows, and it's like...
Yeah, they look like, I'm going to go out for a glam rock band.
Yeah, it's weird. So, it has a happy ending, which is not, really all that surprising. I would have been very surprised if it hadn't. But
it also, part of the ending demonstrates God is a real jerk. Because it ends with him, the devil is lost, and God's just laughing his ass off at him.
One of my favorite quotes of the movie.
Because the only other thing God says are actual quotes from the Bible. The only thing he says to him at first is, on thy belly shalt thou go, dust shalt thou eat. That's from Genesis.
See, I'm eating. It's delicious.
Yummy, yummy dust. Delicious. The parts I think are the most fun. I mean, the wishes are interesting to a degree.
Okay.
But just when George and Stanley are talking about the nature of faith and the nature of God and the devil's role, I still like, you got us cast out of the Garden of Eden. Yeah, you're welcome, mate. The Garden of Eden was a boggy swamp just south of Croydon. You can see it over there.
Not historically accurate.
Yeah. And my favorite moment in it is when Stanley asks, what happened? What happened to get you thrown out of heaven? And he says, let me show you what we used to do. He says, here, I'm God. And he gets up sits on a mailbox. He goes, now I'm God. Now you dance around singing my praises. Like, what? You just do it. But, really, really praise me. And he starts dancing and going, you're handsome. You are wonderful. The universe, what a great idea. No, more personal, this more lavish in the praise. And finally, Stanley stops and goes, I'm getting a bit bored with this. Can we change places? And George looks at him and goes, that's exactly how I felt.
Yeah. Again, this is that part where they're taking strict scripture and going, if you look at it just straight on, it's pretty silly. And it is. And who wouldn't be? But, in that way, the film is sort of tempting us to go, look, the devil's a little bit more interesting than the other side of things, which I guess is part of the whole draw of the film. I usually wouldn't, because we're kind of in the middle here, but I'm looking at the timer and we're actually nearly out of time. Any quick notes you want to get to before we get to that part?
The animated fly business is very strange.
Yeah.
It comes out of... Every so often there's a very problematic line in this when Stanley is trying to, close any loopholes on one of his wishes. And he says, so Margaret and I were both young, white, and healthy.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Britain back then was very, very white.
Very white. Very white.
Yeah.
But,
I had a couple of lines. I
Yeah.
liked, I don't know why it made me funny. I thought it was funny, made me laugh. But at one point, this is the devil as George Spigot, is speaking to pigeons and telling them what to do, and he wants them to go and poop on businessmen. So he says, release your doodahs. Because they can't say poop, I guess. I don't know, but I thought that was funny. And also the other one that I wrote down was nicely decorated early Hitler. So, but
right.
other than that, that was a quick show. We'll get to that part, shall we?
Fast. Yep.
The finish.
So, Max,
Yeah.
it's a new year. Let's change
is.
things up. What did you think of...
Oh, wow. I'm completely disoriented and unable to continue.
Oh,
Thud.
So, you saw it sometime in the 80s on videotape.
I can't answer you. I fainted.
You might want to stop talking.
Oh.
So, what did you think this time around of Bedazzled?
I had forgotten how slow it is.
It is British.
I mean, especially the wish sequences go on. A lot of them go on forever. I think the sequences with Peter Cook and Dudley Moore, and this is the reason they had, their show Pete and Dud, and why they worked together for so many years. Their chemistry is great, and their interaction and their timing is wonderful. And the rest of the movie, I'm just like, come on, let's get back to them.
Yeah.
I think some of it is very funny. I don't think a lot of it's aged very well.
No. Although,
But-
to be fair, this has to be the type of film that was the basis for things like Austin Powers, because,
Oh, absolutely.
dear gods.
And you know that Monty Python must have gotten some inspiration for Life of Brian from this.
Well, and never mind Peter Cook and Dudley Moore helping shape British humor for the next numbers of decades.
They are very, very influential on that. A lot of people don't realize, but they are. It's fun, but it's very languid.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I remember laughing harder the first time I saw it, but I still enjoy it. I think some of it's fun. I just think it's kind of uneven. What about you? You'd never seen this?
No, I have never seen this before.
Sorry. I do also have to point out, for 1967, this is incredibly risky.
I had a feeling it was, which is sad because looking at it today, it's like, bring the kids, who cares?
Yeah, pretty much.
We see a pair of breasts once. And to be fair, we don't know they're Margaret's. It's implied, but they could have been anybody's because you literally have a mirror and two boobs in it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But that's, other than that, there's nothing there to see.
No.
So,
What about you?
not a fan.
No?
It is
Okay.
very slow moving. A lot of British cinema, especially British science fiction. Languid,
dear.
I think, is being kind.
Polite.
Yeah. It's just slow. And the first bit where he decides he wants to be an intellectual just goes on and on and
That
on.
one in particular is very long, is way too long, and there's no good, and the payoff is no good.
Part I thought that was best was the pop star part because they get right to it. The song itself that Dudley Moore sings is actually pretty catchy, and it's like this would totally have been a hit in the 60s in Britain. And I really like the sort of Mr. Spock thing that Peter Cook comes on and does when he's like, no, you don't like me, I'm not interesting, I'm not interested in you, and I'm unapproachable, and blah, 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 blah.
I'm self-sufficient.
Yeah, but I think their performances are fine, but I found the rest of the movie flat. I didn't laugh. I don't think there's, in today's audiences, I don't think there's any laughs left. I think this is just too much of its time.
Yeah, okay.
I get the idea, which is, hey, you should really think about selling your soul to the devil because that's probably not a good idea. And, I should never look for anything beyond my own front door. No, wait, that's Wizard of Oz. It's British. It's the 60s. It's slow. And things are going to get funnier very soon. Very soon. So
Okay, that's fair. I still enjoy it, but I definitely understand an American audience is not going to really get into it because it is slow.
yeah.
And you have to wade through a lot to get to the good stuff. I do like the leaping Berillians,
Sure.
the nuns on trampolines. That's cute.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. But I will say, I want to thank Vince, because Dudley Cook and Peter Moore, whatever their names are, are actually a comedy duo that I have not seen at all. And I know that they are a big deal, and I know they're very influential. I'm so glad that I watched this film, because otherwise I would probably have never heard of or got to it. So thank you for the suggestion, Vince. And
that was very good.
I would like to also thank everyone else ahead of time for answers to this week's poll question, which, Max, if you will go over that again.
I will. Do you have a favorite biblical or Bible-adjacent movie? Ten Commandments, Last Temptation of Christ, Jesus Christ Superstar, I Dream of Jesus, any of those. And
yes, Master. Sure.
Do, all praise Jesus.
No.
It should have been.
No.
And you can answer this by emailing us at maxmikemovies.com or going to our website, maxmikemovies.com, and leaving a comment. You can find us on the Batch Face.
Facebook, 2025.
Whatever, under Max.
Hey, at least I didn't call it
Max
Meta.
Mike Movies. We're also on Blueski.
Yeah, Blueski.
Come find us on Blueski.
Yeah.
And, of course, you can call our most unholy hotline and leave a voicemail at 617-398-7266. That number again, 617-398-7266. Hasn't changed.
Nope.
Call us, won't you?
Yeah.
But we are just getting started with your fabulous suggestions on Remember, You Asked For It. So, what did they ask for next week, Mike?
Well, this is not a film that was actually asked for either on Facebook or our website or Blueski. This is actually a coworker of mine who has been asking me to watch a certain film for, honestly, years, and I have thwarted him at every turn, because that's what I do. I thwart. Now, there's a very well-known director, Walter Hill, and Walter Hill had a number of hits. I want to say that did he do Beverly Hills Cop? I think he did.
I don't remember.
Or it was the other one, 48 Hours. I can't remember. But anyway, very big name, especially in the 80s. There is a film of his, however, that I had never heard of. And I watched the preview this morning, and I'm very dubiously interested. It sounds like it's actually a video game, but it's not. And it has a very early performance by a certain Willem Dafoe, who is in theaters now. The film we're going to be watching next week is Streets of Fire.
Oh, dear. Dick Springfield, isn't it?
No, I don't think he's in it. But I don't know who besides Willem Dafoe, the people that they had named, I didn't recognize. So
I have heard of this for years. I have never seen it.
Me either, but you asked for it. And I think next week we're going to get it. So if you want to get it with us, come and join us for Streets of Fire.
This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.